it was always the stigma that senior living was the place where chefs fade away. It's like
Mhm.
you just go to retire or die. But I wish I had gotten into it sooner. I wish I had
Huh.
had the mindset to understand how crucial and important it is because all of my value is right here. It's in the
Mhm.
75, 80 people that I take care of 3 times a day. And that
Beautiful.
means more to me than all the signed baseballs in the world.
We all are gonna die. 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 Why don't we help each other prepare for it? Without death, there could not be life. I'm talking about end of life conversations, conversations about the end of life. Death and dying, grief and loss, conversations about the end of life.
Well, welcome everybody. We are so happy today to be joined by my good friend, Chef Dave Dekker. Yes, we always call him Chef. I've known Dave for many years as a treasured member of my men's group. There have been many times when he's really impressed me with his compassion and care for the residents he works with at a local senior living facility. He's an institutional chef, and an institutional chef could simply create efficient meals for large groups and be done with it. But that's not the way Chef Dave handles things. He takes a personal and compassionate interest in his elder care family. He spends time visiting with them, asks for their feedback, and creates magnificent gourmet meals and snacks, some of which he's actually shared with us.
Love that. Chef Dave has 43 years of experience in the culinary arts, including work at casinos in Las Vegas and Lake Tahoe, resorts on the Big Island of Hawaii, and in sports entertainment. He has worked for many prominent organizations that we'll all recognize, including the LA Lakers, LA Kings, the Clippers, LA Angels, the Seattle Mariners, the Grammy Awards, the Kentucky Derby, the US Open, and significant events. As noted, he has been working in senior living for the last 5 years. He considers himself a culinary caregiver. Dave has traveled to 7 countries and lived in 9 states, and he's a father to 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls. Thank you, Dave, for showing up and being here with us today.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's great to
Appreciate
have
the
you.
time.
Well, we like to always get a feel for our guests by asking them when they first became aware of death.
Well, I think the first awareness I had of death was probably when my grandfather passed. This was back in the mid 80s or late 80s, early 90s, I think. Yeah. I mean, I'd always been aware of death. And I mean, when I was in right after I graduated high school, a friend of mine was killed in a car accident, it's tough to process when you're, especially for me, because when I was, 19 years old and, spent a lot of time doing what 19-year-olds do, getting high and partying and stuff like that. So it's just like, when you're that age, it's like death. What's death? What are you talking about? I'm immortal. Look at what I can do.
Right. Yeah.
But I think the first time it truly hit me was when my grandfather had passed, and he had had a series of strokes. It's the one thing when I share my experience with people, I always tell them, I say, you can spend a lifetime preparing for someone you love to pass on. And the minute they do, all that preparedness goes out the window. It's like you never even tried because the grief hits you so hard, and it's something that's so familiar to us in this world, but so foreign to us when it happens so close, I guess. That's how I feel
Mhm.
about it. But yeah, I would say when my grandfather, he was my maternal grandfather, and that was the one grandparent I was closest to, him and his wife, my grandmother. I was close with them. In fact, when my grandmother eventually passed, I was living in Las Vegas and she was living with my mother there. I was the one going to hospice to see her every day. And when I got the call that she had passed, I was, 5 minutes away from the hospice center. So I was the first one in the family to go see her body. So, you know,
Mhm.
so that's my first initial experience with a death close to home.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
And you're And you're right, you can prepare for the loss your loved one, and it's still gonna be surprising.
Yeah.
You're just gonna
Right.
still be
Yeah.
shocked that they're gone. After that initial, I guess, awareness after and you're 19 and you lose your grandfather. Was it grandfather? Grandfather, right? Your
My
maternal
grandfather,
grandfather?
and I lost him when I was probably in my 30s. Yeah, I was
Okay.
in my early 30s, very early 30s when he
S
passed. The friend I lost was when I was about 19.
Okay, I was your friend. But after that, like, beginning of that timeline, how did death impact the story of your life? What did it bring into your awareness?
You know, and it's going to sound really strange, or maybe even selfish. I don't think that it really had a serious impact on me to the point where, like, it was down in my core, like, oh my God, life is short. What am I doing? It didn't really hit me until my mother passed from MS 6 years ago.
Mm.
Mm,
And that was something, because she was in a and this is where I pardon me if I get on a soapbox about how we treat the elderly. But, it's one of those things where we are probably the worst country in the world that I've ever visited, that as far as how they treat the people that paved the road for us.
Yeah.
mhm,
We profit in this country off of the sick and the vulnerable.
Yeah.
mm,
And
mhm,
when I got into senior living, and I saw this before I got into senior living, my mother we had to move her out of her home because of the MS. Her condition had gotten to a point where, the fire department was saying, we can't continue to come over every day and pick her up. You need to do something or we're going to send you a bill. And so my sister and I put her into a community similar to what I work in right now. I don't like saying facility because that truly sounds like an inmate or
mhm,
a cast off.
mhm,
And so
Yeah.
I
mhm,
tell everybody I don't work in a facility, I work in a community. These are people that are
Mm.
living, breathing
mhm,
human beings that deserve dignity. And so when
mhm,
my mom was in one, she spent her life savings, well over $500,000 in and healthcare costs, and her disease outlasted her money.
Yeah.
And
mm,
so we had to put her in. Basically, she became a ward of the state of California, and so
mhm,
she was in a Medicaid skilled nursing facility.
But yeah.
So she was in a Medicaid facility sharing a room with somebody that had Alzheimer's. So her body had basically shut down. She couldn't use her hands. They had to Hoyer lift her out of bed, bathe her and things. And there was like zero dignity left. Zero.
Yeah.
And this was my mother. This was the woman, and for whatever flaws we all have as parents, she was still a human being and she still deserves some dignity. And she did some amazing things in life. She even cleaned the teeth of homeless people in her spare time. She was a dental hygienist. But that was her way of giving back. And so now she's, or then at the end of life, she's in this stinky, smelly Medicaid run facility,
mm,
and it was heartbreaking. And I
mhm,
got down there to see her 3 days before she passed. And I'd taken my daughters and we sat by her bedside. When I got there, she wasn't really responsive. And so it taught me about what happens with our body when we're about to go.
mhm,
And I just witnessed the exact same thing. Talk about a trigger event. The exact same thing on Friday with one of my residents. The exact same series of events, everything. From the from the moment where her eyes are open and she's laughing to the next day where she's incoherent to the next day it's just labored breathing and she can barely squeeze a hand. And that's what I went through with my mom. And then I've seen it over and over.
Mhm.
That's what really impacted me. that's where I was like, wow, this isn't something you can just like stuff and
Mhm.
forget about. This is
Yeah.
something it's crucial, especially now I'm dealing with families that are experiencing this and some for the very first time. When you
Yeah.
lose a parent,
Mhm.
it's brutal. And I have dealt with families here at this place for the last 3 years whenever somebody passes, and I take it personally too. Because for me, it's
Mhm.
an honor. For me,
Mhm.
it's a double-edged sword because I grieve with them. Believe me, my eyes get just as wet
Mhm.
when they leave. When I share with them what's going on, I make sure I let them know that it was truly an honor to be that guy to help them along, to
Mhm.
to be the last one, you know, that fed them or the last one that held their hand. You know, I had a resident 2 months ago, and David, I think I shared this with you, is the night before he died. I stopped off, I hadn't seen him in the dining room, and I made a beautiful cheesecake. So I cut him a piece of cheesecake and stopped at his apartment on my way home. And when I went in there, I said, "Hey, I didn't see it today. I want to bring you a piece of cheesecake just in case you feel like eating something." And he invited me to sit down. He said, "Why don't you hang out for a minute?" And I sat with him for damn near 45 minutes. And we talked about our history together because he was one of my biggest critics, my arch nemesis in the first. Oh my God, the guy was always on my crap about, everything's cold except for the iced tea, or something, there's always something. Why can't my waffle be hot? And we developed a friendship and we became close. And in fact, I was involved with a woman. Unfortunately, we separated recently, but her son had committed suicide a year ago and she and I were in the living room with the phone while all this was going on, and I shared that with him. And his son had been killed at the age of 30 by a gunshot, and so he was able to share his grief with my then girlfriend and help her with
Mhm.
her process. And
Mhm.
I'm party to all those, and so
Yeah.
Mhm.
so I sit with him and we're going over our history together. And I told him, I said, "Well, listen, I'm opening up in the morning. I'll be back first thing at around 5:30. I'll come by and bring you some strawberries or something in the morning." He didn't make it, and I walked into his apartment and he was slumped over. He had passed while sitting up watching TV,
Mhm.
and so I moved his body and repositioned him so that way when his family came, it
Mhm.
wasn't weird or
Mhm.
awkward or
Uh-huh.
upsetting. It was like he looked like he was at peace. So
Mhm.
these are things that, and it's the first time I had to touch a dead body in terms of moving was when I first started working here. And the medical examiner, the coroner only sent one person for a pickup, and the guy was 6'3".
Hmm.
And so I had to help lift him and put him on a gurney and all that. So all this experience has
Mhm.
just put me in a whole different mindset,
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
for those people, for any of you out there listening, I'll just put it like that. For anybody listening to this that thinks that when our lights go out, that they stay out, they're sadly mistaken. They are so mistaken because I have not only do I have photographic evidence of my own mother showing up on film, but I just know that there's more to the story. Once we pass from this earth, for whatever reason, if it's a karmic thing or if it's practice to get us to a better plane, whatever it is, there's more when we're done here.
Yeah, for
We're
Mhm.
not
sure.
Mhm.
finished.
Mhm.
And that's what I share with the families of the residents here that, when they pass, it's sad and you're going to carry that grief like a suitcase.
Mhm.
And, you know, and it's going to make your shoulders tired in the beginning. Eventually it goes from a heavy suitcase down to like a duffel bag. And then pretty soon it's like a sling pouch. But yeah, but it gets easier, but it's never easy. if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
That's where
Yeah,
I
and
try to impart.
it's not supposed to be easy. It's always a labor, but it's a labor of love,
Yeah.
to do these
Right.
pieces. It's like you love the humans that are behind the stories, behind the eyes, and we show up for them. I also want to point out, I used to volunteer at a facility. It wasn't a community. It didn't seem like
Okay.
a community,
All right,
but
I'll let it pass.
what I do remember, I was called in to work with folks who end of life, 11th hour, who are alone.
Mhm.
And it would always I'd be busy, right? Like meeting with my folks and making sure that I show up and I'm the only other person who is witnessing the end of their lives. But what I came to see is that a lot of the people who work in these places are also taking care of all these people who are alone. The laundry ladies would stop me at one point, like, yes, we keep checking on him. We all like make sure that we're trying to like go past that floor and make
Mhm.
sure we see him. And I appreciate that, for all those people who work in places where death is occurring or expected, you're called to do this labor of love and you are showing up and I thank you. You
Yeah. Yeah.
know,
And, thank you for saying that because, the one thing that really strikes me, especially the community I'm in now, is everyone here truly has that heart for service and heart for care. And when I hire people, when I'm interviewing for positions here, I tell them all the same thing. I say,
Mhm.
I can teach you how to cook, I can teach you how to serve, I can't teach you how to care.
Mm.
Right.
I need you to, if you can't care about another individual before you care about yourself, then this isn't the place to be.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
say, when you're off the clock, that's your time. But when you're on the clock here,
Mhm.
my residents always come first. Whatever is in their benefit, I will allow because it's for them. So if
Right.
it's, you know, chef, I was saying we should try this. Well, how's it going to
All
benefit the
right.
residents? Or you just want to show off? Because your version of showing something off is something that'll get me complaints in my dining forum, or something like
Yeah.
that. It's like, I need to be able to explain it. So yeah, that's what I really, whether it's care staff, and we have an amazing care team here. And in fact, while this resident was on hospice over the last couple of weeks, everybody in the building went by to check on her and just to say
Yeah.
that they love her. You know,
Yep.
the family was here. She had 4 kids, and, the one daughter was always here, and she and I talked a lot, and she was sitting right by her bed when she took her last breath, and,
Mm.
and I held her. She just bawled into my shoulder, and I couldn't help but get weepy, but I'm just
Mhm.
like, I get it. That's why
Yeah.
we're here. We're doing God's work.
Yeah,
That's what we
absolutely.
do. It's God's work,
Yeah.
so people, I know everybody has their way of doing something nice for somebody else, but I would encourage anybody to go and spend some time at just visit a community someday.
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
go and visit or
Yeah.
drop off some cookies or something,
Mhm.
just something
Mhm.
because, I mean, what I do here is kind of unique in the industry in the terms of like, not a, I, not every community, a country, I'll just broad stroking it because I know that there's individuals out there that care like I do. I'm not saying there isn't anybody else, but what I'm saying is more often than not, what you find are the kitchen managers, I'll say, that run a dining program. And then these companies that are running these communities, it's for
Mhm.
profit. And
Mhm.
so when you're given a food budget, if I were to tell you what the average food budget is per person per day, you would scratch your head going, how the hell do you do it?
Yeah.
It's how is that even possible?
Mhm.
And, it is possible. But what I did was rather than buying the easy way and buying processed foods and frozen lasagnas and, pre-seasoned, pre-cooked chicken and all that stuff, I do everything from scratch here. So including the desserts. So, my residents, when they get cookies, it's not Otis Spunkmeyer.
Mhm,
I have
mhm,
flour, butter, and sugar and vanilla and
mhm,
chocolate chip. I
mhm,
make it. Cakes and
mhm.
pies. We do it all here. We make soups twice a day from scratch
You're
Yeah.
so
just to make
lucky.
sure.
Yeah.
Just to make sure. And in fact, it's funny. One of my
Yeah.
residents, we had a tour, some prospects that were looking, and one of my residents told they asked the resident, "How's the food?" And she kind of shook her head. She goes, "The food isn't the problem. The problem is we're all gaining weight." And so, and for me, that's a good problem to have. So,
Yeah.
I take my time to educate them. But again, that's not every community. A lot of the communities have people that, are just in charge of monitoring the systems as opposed to creating a better way,
Mhm.
or looking at ways on how to make your community thrive. I always tell my residents, I'm not here to make you live longer. I'm just here to make you feel good while you're still here.
Mhm.
Right.
It's all about making sure that you're comfortable, making sure that you're thriving the best way you can. But, you look at the health issues in this country. I deal with people that have gout and people that have diabetes, people that have sodium issues, people that have all kinds of health issues because of lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it, 9 times out of 10, it's lifestyle. And when you think about, the diet of, the boomers, we were all raised on TV dinners and processed foods and all kinds of stuff. And that's our comfort food.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
we want the meatloaf, mashed potatoes. We want the Wonder White bread with the bologna and mayonnaise. That's what we were raised on. So it's our food. It's in our food DNA. It's in our memory.
Yeah.
And I think that the next generation, that's going to shift because now there's more of an awareness about
Mhm.
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 what we're eating
That
and
nutrition.
our health conscious. And the political spectrum right now is a whole nother story, and don't get me started on RFK.
All
Right.
right.
But
We're not going
there
there
are
yet.
some things that I will agree with. It's just I don't necessarily agree with throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I think there needs to be more of a laser focus
Yeah.
rather than a
Mhm.
broad
Well,
stroke.
it's great that you went. I didn't have to ask you about our next question, which is about your current role or work, because you're doing a great job. I think what I really appreciate and have always appreciated as you've told your stories to me over time, and I always say exactly what Annalisa just said. These are lucky people to be in this this community.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I hope that if I ever end up in a community, I have somebody like you who cares enough to create nutritious and yummy food.
Yes. And care
Thank you.
about the human,
Yeah, and
right?
really
Yeah.
care
Yeah,
enough to not just show up. And I love you've
Well,
told
see,
stories about just walking in and sitting down with people at their meals and, how you doing?
and
How's
that's the
everything going?
thing, it's more than just feeding. You're not just feeding their stomachs, you're feeding their souls.
Yeah.
And that element gets this is what forgive the expression, but it really chafes my nads, is where I'm sorry, Lisa. But the thing what really gets me is what I'm sharing with you has become a marketing pitch.
Mm,
And it falls so shallow
mhm,
because it looks great on a poster. It looks great on the entryway in a big frame. We do this better. We want you to thrive and all this. But then when you look at the actual, it's when it's time to show up, what are you actually giving them? What's actually happening there? I that's why I say, do your research if you're considering for your parents, or even if you're considering a place to age in place,
Mhm.
which is basically what we are. So just as for to age in place. But if you're considering these options, you need to really do your research on it,
mhm,
and you have like referral agencies like a place for mom and all these different referral agencies that are there. But also remember that everything that's involved with senior living in this country is about profits.
Mhm.
And it's sad. There's some companies, the company I work for, we walk that fine line. It's there has to be a balance.
mhm,
Shareholders are important, but so are the people that drive our
Mhm.
revenue streams, right? So,
Mhm.
but I think it's the line employees that hold that
Yeah.
more so than the board or than the investors or than the CEOs. It's the front staff, the line staff are the ones that live that practice every day. And those are the ones that should be celebrated.
Yeah.
Those are the
Yeah.
people, the care staff in my building, even the housekeepers, they're amazing human beings. And when you think about what goes on in a community like this, it's you're cleaning up after people, you know, and it's a nasty job, when somebody soils himself or, you know, I've had things happen in the dining room, and it's a matter of dignity.
Yeah.
It's maintaining their dignity because how embarrassing that must be for them.
Yeah.
How hard it is when you realize that, I watched my mother go when she couldn't use her legs anymore. And she was so damn stubborn, that's why she kept hitting the floor. She would fail to accept the fact that her body was on decline.
Yeah.
So it makes it hard, but that's why we're here.
Yeah.
We're here to get
Yeah.
them through
Thank
it.
you. Appreciate you much. Yeah. Um, yeah. How do you keep yourself resourced when you go? I mean, yourself, do you have a way that you can like go outside and take a breath or do some meditation or
I
anything
do
like
I
that
do
that
a lot of
helps?
forest bathing.
Yeah.
So, just to give an example, last weekend or this past weekend, on Saturday, I just got in the car, and just drove. I drove around. But the weekend prior to that, I was having a rough one, and I ended up on Saturday, I went across the Sound, and I really where we live here in Washington, I call it God's country. It's expensive. You get what you pay for, though. And the 3 months or 4 months out of the year, when they turn the water off in July, and then we don't see rain again until late September, October, that makes it worthwhile living up here. And because it's not houses and concrete like when I lived in California, that's all it was. Up here you can get out. I drove up to Index and did some four-wheel driving, and I just sat in a river and just was still. And then my camp trip a few weeks ago, David, that I told you guys about down in Shasta, that's my time. That's my time to release it all and to just be still and just
Mhm.
to have that quiet and turn off the noise.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
it's
our
it's
that's
it's
our best
challenging.
answer. Our number one
Yeah.
answer for taking care of ourselves, getting into the forest.
Yes.
Just get out there and feel it and ground
Mhm.
and I call it listening to the voice of God. When you hear
Mhm.
the wind through the trees, when you hear
Mhm.
the rushing rivers hitting the rocks and all that, that is truly the voice of God.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that sounds better than anything from a TV or conversations from
Yeah.
across the
Yeah.
room. It's just
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
peaceful.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Agreed.
So, Dave, what frightens you about the end of life?
You know, I used to be worried. I'm not scared to die anymore. I'm not because of my faith, I think. What I've witnessed, what I've seen, I'm comfortable with it. And I've lived a really strange and wonderful life. I mean, the experiences I've had, the people I've met, the things that I've done. And to be honest with you, I look back at some of the incidents in my life and there's no real good reason that I should be alive today. But I am. And so the only conclusion I can come to is I'm alive today to be doing what I'm doing now. Everything I did my entire life led me to this moment. And that's how I look at it. And so if I have any fears or concerns about my end of life, it would be for my kids.
Mhm.
It would be that fear of how it will affect them. What are they gonna process? What are they gonna remember? What is it that what's gonna stand out to them when they say their last goodbye to me? When I finally check out, how is it gonna impact them? Yeah.
Yeah.
How are they gonna process that kind of grief? I know what I went through with my own mother. Unfortunately, my daughters were with me when my mother passed. So that was their impact. That was their closest impact. So now that's my concern now is,
Yeah. Make sure. Yeah.
what's going to happen with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why we talk so
Especially the
much.
world that I'm leaving behind. Really
Mhm.
scared for that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
why we have this. One of the reasons we do this is people can have these conversations with each other and with their families
Yeah.
and
Yes.
make this so important. Well,
Mhm.
thank you. We've gotten toward the end of their time, but you have this quote. Do you want to read it, or do you want us to? I guess you told us you couldn't
Yeah,
find it, so I guess
why
we'll read
don't
it.
you read it? Because I've got like 100 million things going through my head on the course of a day.
Understood. All right. Well, Annalise, maybe we'll read it twice since it's fairly
Okay,
short.
let's do it.
Let Annalise, you want to start?
The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away.
I remember that now.
By Pablo Picasso. Yeah.
That's right. I
The
came
meaning of life.
across that. I came across that quote and it struck me because my personal journey, I was an arrogant, selfish bastard for most of my life. And I can own that. I've broken a lot of hearts and I've caused a lot of damage. And I've been through 2 marriages. And looking back from where I'm standing now, that was the one thing I've been searching for my entire life was that meaning of life. What is my freaking purpose here?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you read that and it hits you and you're just like, holy crap, I've been doing this backwards the whole time.
Yeah. Well, I'll read it one more time just as the ending of this. The meaning of life is to find your gift. Such a good story that you've told us. The purpose of life is to give it away. So that's what we're up to. And that's what you're up to, obviously. So really, thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank you.
you
Thank you.
getting to join us
I really
today.
appreciate both of you. I do. I appreciate the time to do this. And I really pray that it reaches a broad audience and
Mhm.
that everybody be encouraged to, as a final note, as a professional chef, and you read some of my bio, I've been all over the place. It was always the stigma that senior living was the place where chefs fade away. It's like you
Mhm.
just go to retire or die, you know. But since I've been in this, I wish I had gotten into it sooner. I wish I had
Huh.
had the mindset to understand how crucial and important it is because I've got and Dave will tell you, I've got bedroom filled with signed baseballs and jerseys and bats and all kinds of stuff. And it collects dust. It has no real value. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe on eBay. No intrinsic value as far as your soul, your worth. But all of my value is right here. It's in the
Mhm.
75, 80 people that I take care of 3 times a day. And that
Beautiful.
means more to me than all the signed baseballs in the world and all that stuff. It's like, wow. And so, I encourage any chefs out there that are looking for purpose instead of
Mhm.
ego, instead of
Mhm.
fame and glory, look for purpose,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
That's a way to
this is
serve.
what we do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love it.
All
Thank
right.
you
That's
so much. Thank you for joining us today. Please stick around after the credits for our afterthoughts, and it helps our numbers if you stay until the end. We want to thank my children, Nate, Vivian, Nina, and her fiance Asher, for the excellent opening song, and a special thanks to our awesome editor, Sam Zemke, who is also a guest on our podcast. You can listen to him on Season 4, Episode 5. Also, thank you to Charles Heaston, the composer of the original music you are listening to now.
And of course, thanks to you, our audience, and all of our amazing guests. Please come back next week for another great episode. Share this with your friends, family, and community. We hope you will subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack. Each guest's additional information will be found in the podcast notes. And of course, if you have a good end-of-life story to share, please reach out. We are always eager to hear from you.